You know, to me, cap and trade in Washington is cap and kill coal in our nation's heartland. But here now is Don Blankenship. He's CEO and chairman of Massey Energy. He knows something about the subject. We also have Walter Williams, syndicated columnist and famous economics professor at George Mason University. We have Jerry Bowyer and Jared Bernstein are still with us. Ms. Blankenship, welcome back to the program, sir. John McCain is pushing cap and trade. Barack Obama is pushing cap and trade. Hillary, if she's still in the race, is pushing cap and trade. I don't see how this country can produce enough energy to fuel our growth in the next 50 years without coal. You tell me what's going on here.
Well, first of all, I think cap and trade is just crazy because most of the coal use increase in the world, about 97%, is outside the United States. So if we're really concerned about climate change, it won't matter what we do. And all these new rules effectively just increase carbon emissions around the world. They don't do anything to truly decrease carbon emissions.
Let me just ask you right there on this new rules would increase carbon emissions. If a producer like yourself is going to sequester coal, produce clean coal, generate coal to liquid for fuel purposes, how does cap and trade, particularly obviously the cap part, how does that affect your operations? Can you still go ahead with these new technologies?
Well, it makes it much more difficult, and it gets like most other industry in this country. It becomes more economical to do that process somewhere else and bring it into the country. So, you know, the logical thing that happens when you make it hard to do something in one country, they just do it in a different one, and you end up not benefiting from it. You're still importing energy, but it's just liquid instead of solid.
In a fantasy world, if the government let you alone and actually deregulated these processes, could you generate clean coal? Can you generate coal to liquid that would fuel transportation?
Yes, you know, they've been doing it in South Africa for years. In fact, the plant was built by American technology with American corporation, and they were doing it in the 40s and, as you know, during World War II. And the problem is the public is led to believe that coal liquefaction is like nuclear fusion or some other theory, but it's not. It's a reality. They can do it. It's just a matter of the numbers. Has nothing to do with a scientific development.
Last one, and I'm going to get some input from our distinguished panelists. The New York Times has a front-page story saying the whole clean coal, coal-to-fuel sequestration, you know, carbon capture and sequester, that the technology is not working and the coal companies are falling behind. Does the New York Times have the story right, in your judgment?
Yes, I mean, we're being prevented from developing energy in all forms in this country, but coal certainly is under attack, both at the production and the use in, and that's the reason that the last couple of billion tons of worldwide coal increase have primarily been somewhere else. And we're fortunate at Massey to benefit from the coal use around the world because we export a lot of coal, but as far as getting free of imported energy in this country, the policies are exactly the reverse of what they ought to be.
Let me bring in my distinguished economics professorial friend, Walt Williams. Walt, as always, great to see you.
Thank you.
Let me hear from you on this issue. You heard Mr. Blankenship, and you know the debate about cap and trade, and you know the debate about coal to liquid. What's your take, Walt?
Well, I think that there are a couple of things we have to recognize. First, the man-made global warming is increasingly found to be a hoax, that it is not true. And our responses to this through cap and trade, it's going to raise the price of energy, it's going to make Americans less competitive, and then guess what's going to happen? Congress is going to come in and try to correct a problem that it created, and the so-called solution to the problems that they create will create other problems.
What's the optimal solution, Walt?
I think that the free market is the optimal solution, and I think that Americans need to be aware that this whole global warming argument is a way for the government to come in and control our lives. That's the whole agenda behind these environmentalists. They want government to have greater power to control our lives.
Jared Bernstein, I want you to weigh in. I want Jerry Bowyer. We're running a little short.
Okay,
Jared,
well,
do you disagree with Walt? Do you disagree with Mr. Blankenship?
It's not that I disagree. It's that pretty much everybody else disagrees, including the next president, whoever he or she may be, disagrees, including the scientific community, and including, at this point, President Bush. I mean, global warming Walt is such an outlier. Now, as far as what Mr. Massey said, there was a lot of interesting points that he made. One point, though, is that I really do see this as a market failure. The market has failed to produce the kind of capture and sequester mechanisms that he's talking about. And I think that, again, the science, as I understand it, is that we're not nearly as close to that as we ought to be, or as I think some of his comments would suggest. I'd be interested in hearing more about that.
Well, I think one of the things that one has to recognize, when Jared and others talk about market failure, they fail to consider that there's government failure, and government failure is far more harmful than so-called market failure.
Jerry Bowyer, let me get you in there, and I'm going to give Ms. Blankenship the last word, but go on ahead, Jerry.
Mr. Blankenship is right. Unless it's a global cap and trade, we're not going to stop emitting carbon into the environment. We'll just stop emitting it here in the U.S. It'll be emitted in Mexico and in India and in China, and it won't do anything about alleged global warming.
But they've tried it in Europe, Jerry. It's not working, as Mr. Blankenship said.
That's because they set the caps too high. They're bringing them down.
It's major. It's causing electricity prices to go up 30%. It's what Walt Williams just told us. Europe is actually the experiment. Do we want to... Mr. Blankenship, I got to give you the last word. I'm out of time.
Well, essentially all we're doing is exporting our pollution, and it just doesn't make any sense at all, because the world is going to use coal, and if the U.S. doesn't use it, we're going to be disadvantaged.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Don Blankenship, Massey Cole, appreciate it very much. Kudlow All-Stars, lots more work to do, much more to cover.